Welcome to Unsung Sluts. In today's episode, we explore Puritans. A little bit of both.
Oh
Puritanical
my God.
bullshit.
Never has my research for this podcast pissed me off so much.
Yeah.
Like, I've been salty about things. Like, he didn't treat her very nice. And she should have got more recognition for this thing. I got heated over this stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Hold me back.
yeah. So the cool thing, too, is like we're talking about a really specific time in history. Like, it's only like 25 years that we're really talking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And like how much American culture is still like owes its roots to this, like I would refer to as insanity, but I have like a different opinion about religion. To me, I'm like, this is madness. What are you fighting over?
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about we're going to change how we present this information a little bit for this episode. Hopefully it's entertaining still.
Well, it's going to be chock full of nuts.
It's going to be
a lot of information, but I agree. When you started doing your research and you decided to kind of morph it into this, I was totally behind it. I think it's a great idea.
And I think we might do it for future subjects because we're talking about like Puritan women in general. And I think that's, something that also needs to be explored, which is how we tell women's stories and why we tell the specific stories that we tell and why are these the women that we are even able to find.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
because I thought we were coming up on the American holiday of Thanksgiving, and I didn't want to do a Thanksgiving episode. I mean, I'm very thankful for everything. That's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But like historically.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, what about women that bucked the system that we refer to as the Puritan movement?
Yeah.
And so that's what we're doing today. We're talking about the rebels.
Yeah. The funny thing is that like they're rebels, but they're rebels like in the same way that like Guy Fawkes is like praised and everyone's like, oh, anarchist, blah, blah, blah. No. Staunch Catholic who wanted the Catholic Church in charge of the government.
Yeah.
Not and these women, while like they did challenge the status quo, still it was just like it was same book, different page.
Yeah, it was like, let us believe in our make-believe story. No, you can't. You have to believe in our make-believe story.
And then in some cases
we kill you.
Yeah, and then in some cases like, hey, want to hear about my make-believe story? No. Kill you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really what was upsetting.
We spoke briefly about this as we do when we choose a subject. And I was kind of just doing like a cursory look at, I do my standard Google search first. What can I find? Right.
Work the Googs.
And Stacey's over here. I call Anne Hutchinson and I'm like, Google, right?
One.
Anne Hutchinson is like the first like 7 entries. So I was like, motherfucker. So I started looking a little bit more and pretty much everybody else, there's basically like 4 Puritan women that we know about.
At least widely.
Yeah, widely. To where like they're Google searchable. Like let's say like in this day and age, like they have a Wikipedia page and you can Google them.
Well, let's do this. Forget that we just said Anne Hutchinson. Think in your head, name 5 Puritan women.
Yeah.
And fiction doesn't count.
Also name 5 Puritan men.
That I can do, though, because... There's Aaron Burr's grandpa.
Good. Oh, that's very specific.
Jonathan Edwards.
Okay. Wasn't he like... Didn't he run for... No.
That was a different...
Oh, no, he's a psychic.
And very, very common name here in the U.S.
Yeah.
Yeah, the hellfire and brimstone stuff that I had to study in school, I actually remember that mostly because it, again, pissed me off.
Yeah.
And then there's like Scarlet Letter.
Yeah, right. And that's like most of, you have like those stories you definitely, people know about, like the witches. So I stumbled on a blog post that was written by Joanne Butler.
Okay.
She's a former New England archaeologist an author of Rebel Puritan, which is actually one of a series which like focuses on one of these 4 women that we know
I
about.
stumbled upon her myself.
Did you? Okay.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So she's also the 8th great granddaughter of
Herodias?
Herodias, but
Now,
then she was known as like several other.
Herod.
Yeah.
And yeah, she has, well, I don't want to give away too much of her story because her name really factors into the story.
Yeah.
But I also didn't do like a Google tell me how is this pronounced, so I apologize.
Yeah.
But it looked to me like Herodias.
Yeah.
And it's a biblical name.
Right.
Okay.
She talks about the fact that most of the information that we have about these women and the reason that we even know about them at all is that they got in trouble or they got married. Like the documents that we have for these women, when we discuss Anne Hutchinson and you get into greater detail, none of what Anne Hutchinson ever said herself is left.
Yeah.
Everything that we know.
I have some.
Do you?
Yeah. Oh, because I did the deep dive.
Well, did she? Is it things that she said in court?
Court transcripts.
Okay, yeah. So that's it.
Yeah.
Is like recorded documents in court.
Yes.
Mostly. So Mary Dyer is one of these 4 women that if you look up like rebellious Puritan women, you're gonna get like 4 women.
Yeah.
We don't know where she was born. We don't really know when she was born. She doesn't really appear to exist at all until she's married in London in 1633.
Right.
Which we know from church documents.
Right.
So before that,
Well, you would also know from church documents when she was christened. And if a church burns down, all that's gone.
Yeah.
You know, I found even in my own genealogy,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, well, you know, your ancestor was born in 1453 in this town and the church burned down, so you're going to find nothing.
So good luck to you.
No, it really is because
Yeah.
that's what they used to record everything.
Yeah. And so while men during this time were making their own records, there are a couple of women who were making their own records, which is to say that other information was saved. Their writings, like for instance, Anne Bradstreet, who was the first published American woman, she was protected by her position. As I mean, historians agree that the reason that she was able to be published was because of who her father was.
Sure.
But she's one of the very few women who actually left her own records. Lots of like super sexy letters to her husband.
Yes, I remember that from literature.
Yeah, which is interesting too, because that same woman that I was talking about earlier, Joanne Butler, she also talks about, well, actually that led me to
and her things,
deeper.
they're historical fiction.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah,
Based on like her own research, but yes, historical fiction.
No, historical fiction's great. How I took a class in historical fiction. It was an online class. And how they described it is you take the facts.
Yeah.
You know, you don't take Benjamin Franklin and you put him on the moon.
No. Yeah.
You take Benjamin Franklin and you say, okay, he was in this town during this time. It was summer. It was hot. He probably walked from his address, which we know,
Yeah.
to that church.
Yeah, it's like a probable.
So that's the historical.
Yeah.
The fiction is how it smelled,
Yeah.
you know, or the sweat dripping off of them, like all of those extra. So a good historical fiction, you're not losing a lot of the history.
Yeah.
You're just filling in the sights and sounds and smells and feels.
Yeah.
So that's
You're
good
bringing it
historical
to
fiction.
life.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know, I've not read that. I read her blog post, and I found her interpretation of like the research itself to be really interesting. I mean, because that's what we're doing, you know, like we're digging into history and we're trying to piece together these stories, some of which like we disagree with the historians a little. Like, I don't think Bathory was like bathing in the blood of virgins. I have a very different idea of what was going on there.
Right.
What I wanted to talk about is just that it's the information that we have is just based on those kind of documents. You know, we know. So in the late 1630s, Mary gave birth to a child. Did you want to talk about this one?
I do. Please
Okay.
let me talk
So
about that.
that's a piece of information
Because of
that
the
we
aftermath
only
of
have
it.
exactly. We only know
Such
that
bullshit.
it even happened because the fact that she was being shamed. And it's kind of interesting that we know about these women, and now we understand enough to revere any woman who was really like challenging the system, because we have a different understanding of feminism and
And a celebration of it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of interesting that a lot of the people that we celebrate and that become our heroes, specifically women, are the ones who were like getting arrested and like, you know what I
Killed.
mean? Yeah.
Killed.
So, but although like I guess that's kind of true about male. No, nobody killed Benjamin Franklin, so he doesn't. That's
No,
different.
you gotta admit there's a bit of a double standard.
Yeah.
When it comes to this.
I found that interesting, that the whole sort of exploration of women's history, how we tell women's stories, and this kind of general mockery of women's studies as like a class or like an area of study, but really you're diving into half of society's experience, and it's a half that's not really generally discussed for whatever reason. Like, I mean, we don't talk about Puritan women's periods, but we also don't talk about Puritan man's boners.
Sure.
Right? Like,
Right.
so I get that's not part of the conversation. But what was life like for women? How did the laws impact the daily life of a woman? This is American history as much as, what Benny Franklin was doing, or like
Sure.
what, you know what I'm saying?
Sure,
Like,
and it wasn't a fringe group. You
No.
know, it's half of the population.
it's half of the population.
It's not like a
Exactly.
couple people sprinkled here or there.
No.
They were a major part of the
Yeah.
society.
Yeah. And it's these historians who are now trying to go through court documents, and, people like this woman who has, she spent time in New England. She's read all of the papers that she can find, and secondhand accounts and third-hand accounts, and what was going on in this. And she's trying to tell those stories.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because we're just putting together a puzzle.
Absolutely.
It's not. We don't really
Absolutely.
know
And if
a lot
you
of this
follow us
stuff.
on Instagram, which you should, a hashtag that I use every single time is hashtag tell her story.
Yeah.
'Cause that's actually what we're trying to do. Mm-hmm. I would love to find someone that literally no one knows about. Like, my dream is a listener tells us, oh, you know what, I think my grandma did this like amazing thing, or my 3 times great grandma.
Yeah.
And I say, well, you know what? I'm going to go to the Library of Congress and I'm going to get to the bottom of it. And then I dive in and I do all this research with all these firsthand, manuscripts.
yes.
And I solve a fucking mystery.
Dude, so let me tell you, after I read the blog post, I was like, all right, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go and I'm going to find where specifically what documents are the source material. Because a lot of the time I'll use like secondhand papers written by like college professors, or
I use
like
a lot of
So in fact, that's part of what I was reading about, like the exploration of how we like depict women through like this lens of feminism. But like, anyway, it's like that's like a whole episode. But I decided that I wanted to like find the source from like the Wikipedia page, but then every entry was just this other source that was just somebody else writing about it. And I was like, what is the core? Where does the core information come from? Where are those books? You know what I mean?
I know where they're
Like underground, hidden,
No,
protected.
they're LOC.
What is that?
Library of Congress.
Well, can we just like go there?
Yes, I have a Library of Congress library card.
We should do that then. Let's do that.
Okay.
Field trip. Hashtag field trip.
Hashtag-
Hashtag send us to the Library of Congress. Go fund me.
When I went there, I didn't have a project in mind. We weren't even doing this when I was at the Library of Congress. So I was trying to do research about my great-grandfather, the vaudevillian. Mm-hmm. And it just so happens everything I was looking for had been taken out because they were completely, what's it called when you fix stuff?
Restore.
Restore and rehab. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I didn't get to see anything.
Ah,
But I was happy because that's what they were doing. Like, that's why I couldn't see it.
yeah.
So next time. But I would love to have a project that
Yeah.
We go and do
I
that.
still haven't really found any kind of satisfactory answer to who is the first woman, like, commented on in history. Like, who's the first
Yeah.
woman that we know about in history. There are a few answers that all are sort of around the same time, but
Non-biblical.
yeah, well, I mean, because then, like, by the time that we had biblical stories, like, we have other people that we
have-
know about,
yeah.
like political leaders and stuff like
Yeah.
that, kings and pharaohs and everything.
Yeah.
But I'm talking, like, like the first writing is are like tracking and receipts for sales from this, like,
Yeah.
this guy, and there's like,
There are some brilliant cave paintings done by women.
oh,
Where
like,
she
and
was just
see, that's
known
like,
as that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but we can't know that
lost
at
to
all.
time.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have more details. I
Yeah.
was really fascinated with just like the idea of how we tell these stories, and because sometimes it is really frustrating because I use the internet. I don't have the Library of Congress, and to be honest, my local library is a little lacking when it comes to, like, ancient
Sure.
tomes. You know what I
Sure.
mean?
Yeah.
So, where else am I gonna do my research but on the internet? And so sometimes you end up with just like this standard. This is this person. This is what happened, and it's all the same source.
Right.
I want
And
to.
if that source is wrong,
And if that source is wrong, I
then
don't know.
you're just propagating more bullshit,
Yeah.
which doesn't
Then
feel
I'm the
good.
asshole, Stacie.
Yeah.
Then I'm the asshole.
I know. I mean, it's not.
I don't want to be the asshole.
No, I don't want
That's
you
what
to.
was so that's why I didn't really do a woman, because, like, also part of me was kind of like, all these women are just like other crazy religious people. Like, I was like, fucking hey. Like, I wanted somebody who was like fucking letting their hair
Rambo.
down and taking their toddies out, and they're just like, what's up, bitches? Like, I'm a witch. Like, I wanted somebody who was like,
Those didn't live long.
no. And apparently,
And let's not tell
like,
their story, because then it'll make
No.
other people do the same thing.
Yeah, and
gotta
when you-
silence that shit.
when you talk about Mary, you're going to see why women didn't get in trouble.
Yep.
But I also found the concept of speak back to Anne Bradstreet and her, like, hottie toddy letters to her husband Simon. That also showed, because one of the papers I was reading was about, like I said, looking through the lens of feminism at these stories, and we have this kind of general assumption that, like, the women were subjugated totally because they didn't have rights, and they didn't go to town meetings, and they didn't do all of these things that, like, we find to be, like, it's fundamental to, like, being part of the process of civilization to be allowed to access to these things, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, we have a female Speaker of the House.
Yeah.
It's
So we're like,
that's normal.
obviously you should,
Yeah.
these are important things, but not all of the women cared about those things. And just because they were, like, subjugated in that way, like, they weren't really allowed to participate in their own leadership, they still were freer than we might imagine, as far as, like, their freedom to marry for love. And there was an arranged marriage. That wasn't a thing.
Okay.
So that was kind of interesting, that we have this idea of what subjugation is, but, like, it's like, oh, but you're kind of free.
Kind of.
Like, hey, how about this? Your husband can beat you, but you're going to love him. So it's okay.
Shit. That sounds horrible.
I mean, as long as they were fine, they were good kids, they didn't get a spanking, so it's fine.
Ey. Not cool. So
It's not cool. That should be a choice if you get a spanking.
Right.
It should be up to you.
It should be consensual spanking.
Like,
Always.
you should have to ask for a
Always.
spanking.
Right.
Do you want to go, and then I will
Do you want me to go, and then you
interject?
can pepper
Yeah.
in some?
I'll interject
Yeah.
with my witty banter.
All right.
Okay.
Well, I'll talk about Anne Hutchinson, because I think if anyone does know, anyone who just, like, has a cursory knowledge of this time period might know the name Anne Hutchinson.
Yeah.
And I wonder how many people think, oh, she must have been a witch. Because that's how we know these women, is they were burned at the stake or something.
Yeah.
And it mentions it in some hellfire and brimstone something.
Yeah.
Right.
And we picture her on a pyre with her hands behind her back. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Anne Hutchinson, she was born Anne Marbury in Alfred, Lincolnshire, England. She was the daughter of an Anglican cleric who felt very strongly that a clergy should be well educated. And that really pissed his church superiors off because it's harder to fool and fuck with educated people.
Yeah.
They're like, no, keep them dumb. By the way, this way of thinking got him censured and thrown in jail. But this philosophy was advantageous to his daughter because he gave her an education that was not afforded to girls at this time. And she was wicked smart. She was super smart. So she married William Hutchinson. That's why she's known as Anne Hutchinson when she was 21. And they began...
21?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, she was 21. And they began following a preacher named John Cotton. So sidebar, but this is kind of important, that Cotton, he was a Puritan, and he was kind of this gentle guy and super popular with the people in his area, but the church didn't like him. He wanted to change how religion was done within the established Church of England and preach his shit to the people in like a simpler manner, if that makes sense. And, you know, although he didn't agree with how things were being done, he didn't want to separate from the church and like start his own thing because he wanted to make reforms and change it from within.
Yeah.
That was really important to him.
Yeah.
So by 1632, however, the assholes at the head office had had enough of him and started increasing pressure on all of these sort of non-conforming clergymen. So Cotton was forced into hiding. And then the following year, 1633, he and his wife boarded a ship for New England, and the Hutchinsons, Anne and William, and their 11 children followed. That's why he's important. He'll be important later, too. They followed him and soon became pretty well established in the bustling settlement of Boston.
Nice.
So that's where we are now, Massachusetts. So Anne was a midwife by trade. She actually did have a trade. And she was not afraid of sharing her own personal religious beliefs. I mean, her dad was a clergyman. She's educated. This is how she was educated, right? It makes sense.
Yeah.
So...
And she's devout.
She is.
Yeah.
So she began using her house every week and doing kind of a debriefing or commentary on the preacher's latest sermons.
Nice.
I'm actually picturing like Siskel and Ebert.
Yeah.
Like you've seen the movie.
I was thinking it's like a Goodreads review.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like
thumbs up on treat others how you like to be treated, but 2 thumbs down on this hellfire and brimstone.
Yeah.
Not cool. So it's not hard to believe that these meetings became popular with certain townsfolk. And then she began offering meetings for men as well. Like at first it was just women, but she became so popular, men
and nobody
started
cared
coming.
what they thought.
But one young man that did come was the young governor of the colony, Henry Vane. So that's kind of cool. Like that's actually like a celebrity. So in these meetings, she began to accuse the local ministers, except for Cotton. Cotton's still cool, of preaching a covenant of works, which is that God promised Adam and his descendants eternal life if they obeyed moral law. That's very important. It keeps everyone in line, right? Don't break the laws of our town that we made up, or you won't go to heaven. It's not just we're going to throw you in jail. It's eternal damnation if you jaywalk.
Yeah.
You know, it's that kind of shit. Anne was a proponent of a covenant of grace, which was the belief that the gospel frees Christians from required obedience to any law, whether scriptural or civil or moral, which I find really interesting.
So she's like an anarchist.
Yes, salvation is attained solely through faith. Like, I believe in God.
So I can do
God
whatever the
speaks to
fuck I
me.
want.
Yeah. And I'll be judged later on.
Right on.
Right?
Yeah. Well,
But
I mean,
it's
like,
not-
this is my question. Like, didn't Jesus die, though? Like, so we can do, like, whatever you want.
Right, but if you preach that sort of thing,
Then
you
people do
can
whatever they
do
want.
whatever that you want. Right?
I mean, what people don't know is that they can do whatever they want.
Right.
Like, what's keeping them is not the illusion of religion. It's the fact that they know in the core of their being that it's not right to do that.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean?
No, yes, I know what you mean.
All right.
This was not the sentiment of the time.
Not at all.
And many ministers...
I would picture me on a pyre, hands
Yeah.
behind
No,
my back,
You
dead.
You did not live to 40.
Nope.
Nope.
I done been
Maybe
dead.
if you went off, you would have got banished.
I would have been living with all the gay musicians and whores and whatnot.
Yeah.
I'd be Jesusing the fuck out of
There
it.
you go. So you're right though. Like this is not working for the laws of the town.
Yeah.
Right. And many ministers began to complain about her increasing rebel rousing and her unorthodox religious teaching. And all of this became known as the antinomian controversy,
Yes.
or the free grace controversy. So it's she and Cotton.
And that's specifically the church was known as the Boston Church.
Yes.
That
Yep.
experienced this
Yes.
kind of, yeah.
Yep, this is where this began.
Yeah.
So it was she and Cotton. Her brother-in-law was a minister, and Henry Vane, the governor. Mm-hmm. They were all on the shit list of the local Massachusetts Bay Colony ministers. And you can see why. She's educating women and men.
Yeah.
She is saying that you don't have to follow any of man's laws to get into heaven. And this was seen as literally tearing the social fabric of society apart.
Wow.
Like literally, this is what she's in trouble for. And not only that, she was telling people that you really don't need ministers to be an intermediary between you and the Lord.
Oh, that's what Jane Grey got killed for.
Yeah, you could just talk to him yourself.
Yep.
You don't
They
need
don't
these
like
guys.
that.
And this also allowed her to identify as a mystic participant in the transcendent power of the Almighty. And this was so empowering to women because otherwise their status was like absolutely determined by their husbands and fathers. But now they could be allowed to take on roles of religious leadership that were, well, denied to them in this very male-dominated church hierarchy. And by late 1636, this all came to a head, and Hutchinson and her supporters were accused of two heresies in the Puritan church: the antinomianism and familism. So,
What was
F-A-M, like family, familism. So
okay.
the first one literally is against or opposed to the law,
right?
but in a theological way.
Okay.
Familism,
Opposed to the biblical law.
yes,
Okay.
what they say the biblical law.
Yeah, yeah.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Familism involved one's perfect union with God under the Holy Spirit, coupled with freedom from both from sin and from the responsibility for it.
How insane is it that these were laws?
No, there were laws.
And it would make America great again, right? Like great when we had like biblical law. Like that's
You know, it's timely.
right.
It's timely. So get this. Hutchinson and her supporters were sometimes accused of engaging in immoral behavior, or otherwise known as free love. And this was just to discredit them.
Oh, they actually didn't. Oh, well,
No,
then
they
never mind.
didn't. This was just good old-fashioned 17th century slut shaming. That's all it was.
Oh, yeah.
In fact,
So they were
I think it
painting
was-
them as witches a bit.
so you know that Mary and Anne were pregnant. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Well,
oh, I didn't know. Were they pregnant
yeah.
at the same time?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't
And
know
they
that
were saying
part.
that
Okay.
they had the same father, Henry Vale.
Oh.
And that everyone was fucking.
Yeah.
And that's why these women got knocked up. And I'll go into that later. Okay.
Yeah, and then what they did to it's. I mean, it's like I don't know that it's no, because when did the witch trials take place after this? So I wonder if that's the first time that someone is like fully like shamed like that in history, like in written history.
I don't know.
No, because probably in Rome.
Probably not.
They were probably slut shaming in Rome.
They're slut shaming in the Bible.
yeah.
Okay.
So
All right.
there's a little slut loving. It's weird. The Bible's like, it's
Old-
okay
is it
to
Old
use
or
your
New Testament
yeah,
kinda
yeah,
different?
exactly. Like Old
Yeah.
Testament is much more like it's totally okay to seduce a guy if you're just gonna cut his head off.
Sure.
Like that's fine,
Yeah.
you know.
Is that
and
like Salome?
it's
Or am I
yeah,
thinking
something.
fiction?
They're
Yeah.
like he killed her husband, and then she's one of like the biblical heroes of.
Heroes. She cut off his husband's head.
Well, he fucking had it coming.
Hero status. Okay. In November 1637, she was put on trial for the crime of slandering the ministers and troubling the peace of the Commonwealth and churches. So no separation of church and state.
Talking shit and starting shit.
See, these assholes made up stupid laws, and then you had to obey them or you couldn't go to heaven. That's basically what's happening.
Yeah.
Such bullshit. And here, I have learned through this research, is another time machine moment for me because I want to go back and watch this trial myself.
Yeah.
Because this bitch was quite obviously the smartest person in the room.
Oh my God.
And she fucked with them and stonewalled and used their own arguments against them all day long.
That's awesome.
So here's a little bit.
Yeah.
So Mr. Noel, this is just one of the guys, because it was all men.
Yeah, of
right?
course.
Yeah.
I'm picturing very few chins.
Yes.
Or a lot of chins. They either have no chin or they have
There's actually pictures of these guys.
Oh,
I mean, paintings.
Am I right?
Paintings. They look like typical
weak chin bitches, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So he says to her while she's on the stand, how do you know that that was the spirit? Basically, how do you know that that was the spirit that was talking to you? Mm-hmm. And she says, how did Abraham know that it was God that bid him offer his son, being a breach of the sixth commandment? And that's funny because earlier they had an argument about the fifth commandment in which she fucking owned him. Mm-hmm. So now she's bringing up a different commandment just to be like, boom, you got more commandments? Boom.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's kind of funny. This is just her being brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
So she says, well, how did Abraham know that it was God that spoke to him? And the deputy governor says, by an immediate voice. And she says, so to me, by an immediate revelation. Like, yeah, me too. Mm-hmm. He said, how an immediate revelation? And she said, by the voice of his own spirit to my soul. I will give you another scripture, Jeremiah 46, 27, 28, out of which the Lord showed me what he would do for me and the rest of his servants, but after he was pleased to reveal himself to me. Ever since that time, I have been confident of what he hath revealed unto me. Therefore, I desire you to look to it. For you see this scripture fulfilled this day, and therefore I desire you that you tender the Lord and the church and commonwealth to consider, and look what you do. You have power over my body, but Lord Jesus hath power over my body and soul. And assure yourselves this much, you do as much as in you lies to put the Lord Jesus Christ from you. And if you go into this course you begin, I bring a curse upon you and your posterity, and the mouth of the Lord hath spoken it.
Damn. She was a witch.
And then he followed that up with Mrs. Hutchinson, the sentence of the court. You hear is that you are banished from our jurisdiction as being a woman not fit for our society, and you are to be imprisoned till the court shall send you away. And then this was also followed by a March 1638 trial in the church, where she was put out of her congregation. So, like, you're not allowed to be here anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sad story time here.
Okay.
Here's where we get into this. So I should say trigger warning, content warning. We are going to start talking about miscarriage stuff here. So
yeah,
be aware. It was discovered later that she was pregnant during this trial.
Yeah.
This happened while she was, she gave birth while she was in prison awaiting her banishment orders. She gave birth to what the doctor at the prison called, quote, a handful of transparent grapes. And, it does make sense with all the stress and turmoil of what she'd been going through that she would miscarry.
So,
doctors now know that this is probably a hydatiform mole, a condition occurring most often in women over 45, resulting from one or two sperm cells fertilizing a blighted egg. So poor thing. After she got her banishment orders and boned out of there with some of her other supporters, they established the settlement of Portsmouth, which became the colony of Rhode Island now, right? The Providence plantations. After her husband's death a few years later, Massachusetts looked like it was going to take over Rhode Island as well, so she went further away into the land of the Dutch settlers. She settled with her younger children near an ancient landmark called Split Rock. You might know it today as the Bronx.
Yeah.
That's where she was. She was in New York, basically. But don't forget where and when this is, though, okay? Mm-hmm. So these people are settlers.
Yeah.
They're in an area that was, already inhabited.
Yeah.
Yeah, and tensions at this point were
Not,
high.
yeah, it was not
with the
good.
local tribes.
Yeah.
In
Because
August,
that was after little Thanksgiving history. The first 50 years after Plymouth Plantation, there was peace until Prince Philip, that was his name, who was the son of Massasoit, read a book that was about property law and taxes. And he's like, hey, yo, you
Yeah.
know. So, and then after that, people were like,
Yeah.
then there was like this whole fake dinner thing, and they like
yeah.
try to kill him, and yeah.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. So August 1643, Anne and 6 of her 15 children and other household members were massacred by the local tribe. The only survivor was her 9-year-old daughter, Susanna. Did you hear about this? She was taken captive.
So I read that there was like some discrepancy in how many of the children were killed and how many were left. And wasn't Anne Hutchinson herself taken captive, or it
No,
was the
from
daughter?
it was just the daughter. Now she has 15 kids.
Yeah.
Only like 6 were with her at this
Yeah.
point. She had adult children that stayed in Boston, which is kind
Yeah.
of weird, but that's where they are.
Well, no, I mean they got their own shit going
didn't
on.
go
They're
with their
grown ups.
mom.
You got to let
Yeah.
it go.
From what I heard, they took all of the property and put it
Yeah.
inside the cabin, including the humans, and set it ablaze. That's how they were killed. But this is a really cool kind of sidebar. Susanna, the daughter, she was spared because of her red hair. And the natives had never seen that before, is the report.
And then she did return later, but had kind of become.
Well, she was adopted into the tribe.
Yeah.
And was given the name Mi Pak, which means pretty leaf or autumn leaf. She lived with them about 4 years. She allegedly got married and had a couple kids with her husband in the tribe. And even forgot her white girl language.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what I read,
yeah.
that she forgot. Yeah.
So yeah, basically after that war, it was called a war between the natives and I guess at this point the Dutch, right, in this
Yeah.
area. And once that war was over, the Indians were holding her for ransom, but also kind of loved her, I think.
Yeah.
And then the ransom got paid, and she was returned to her siblings in Boston unwillingly because she had come to love her native family.
Did she have to leave her children?
Evidently, yeah. Because when she got back to Boston, she married John Cole a few years later on. And he was actually the owner of the very first tavern in Boston.
Nice.
Yeah. And she died at the age of 80 in 1713. But back to Mom, and we can finish the story out. Anne Hutchinson is a key figure now in the history of religious freedom in the American colonies and in the history of women in ministry, because she challenged the authority of these ministers.
Yeah.
And the government. I mean, the people that are... She did crimes against the church, yeah?
Yeah, but it was the government at
It was
the
the
same time.
government that was putting her on trial.
Yeah.
Right? She's honored by the state of Massachusetts with a statue monument at the State House, calling her a courageous exponent of civil liberty and religious toleration. There is a young girl clinging to her in the statue that's supposedly her daughter, Susanna. She has been called the most famous or infamous English woman in colonial American history. She was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame in 1994. And this is cool. In 1987, Massachusetts Governor Michael Dukakis pardoned Anne Hutchinson, revoking the order of banishment by Governor Winthrop 350 years earlier.
Well, that's
A little bit
pretty
of
cool.
justice.
Yeah.
So that's her story. Do you have
Yeah.
anything to interject? Or I will go on to Mary Dyer.
So no, because you mentioned Anne Hutchinson. I tried to stay away from her, but I did learn a little bit about her. Specifically,
It's hard
like,
not to.
Yeah, because she really is like the number one when you look up Puritan women, even in general.
Yeah.
She's pretty much it. Like it's, and then almost everyone else that we will talk about is associated with her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it was like we know about them because of her.
This is not like, let's talk about the history of rock and roll. And I could name 100 women
Yeah.
and do research on them and,
Yeah.
may never have to repeat one.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there's, yeah.
Yeah, it's limited. It's limited information in general,
Yeah.
which is frustrating. And then additionally, it's that they're women, so like nobody. I mean,
At the time,
I really care.
we care.
Yeah,
That's why we're
but we
doing
care
this.
now. That's that's the thing too, is that it's like for a long time nobody did care. So it's like
Right.
you get further and further away from the actual information.
Yeah.
I think now from now on we're definitely, keeping better track. I mean,
Yeah.
every time a woman does something, it's like the 12th woman to do this thing, and it's like cool, we're at 12. Like no offense, it's awesome. And like if you are a female astronaut and you have done 12 spacewalks, you've done a shit
You've
ton.
done 12 more
You
than
got
me.
way more than me. You got like so keep it on, but like also when do we stop having to count?
Yeah.
When do we just
It's
say
an
like
astronaut.
that's an astronaut doing a spacewalk? It's fucking
That's a
hashtag
really...
like let me tell you, like spacewalks are freaking boring. Okay? Like the only
Then
part
why
about
do
it
I watch every one?
the last time I was watching, I watched the two women spacewalk because like it's two women in space.
Yeah.
Like, Anyway.
Yeah.
And it's boring. It's two people fixing a broken machine.
I know, but I pretend like that's me.
I would have, do I would have like a panic attack. I could barely get
I
through
know.
Gravity. That movie, like when she couldn't breathe, I held my breath. It was like dangerous.
Yeah.
Almost died.
Yeah. So I'd be an astronaut and you'd be like, oh, Stacey's doing another fucking boring spacewalk.
Oh my
I'm not even
God.
going to watch this one.
It's only because the spacesuit fit her.
That's funny. Okay, I'll talk about Mary Dyer then.
Yeah, and then yes, so
And the
Mary
other thing
Dyer's
is-
story was like so sad because it's like you don't know anything about her, and then the things that you do know about her are just like propaganda, bullshit,
Yeah.
smearing. Like it's so yeah. So talk about Mary
and
Dyer.
and this is kind of Cliff Notes. Obviously, if we were doing a full thing, you
Yes.
can go on for hours.
Yeah.
So
There is more information. We're just we're gonna give you
For
because
example-
there's only 4 women, we can cover them all in one episode.
yeah, for example, I'm going to cover her entire childhood by saying she was from England.
Yes.
She was well educated, and then she married William Dyer. She
Mm-hmm.
was a Puritan in the same vein as John Cotton.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that there needs to be reform. It should come from within. Let's
Yeah.
not go do our own thing. Let's fix this machine.
Yeah.
Okay. She came to Boston in 1635. She joined the Boston Church and became a strong advocate of Anne Hutchinson and that whole movement.
Yeah.
She and her husband used to go to the meetings at Anne's house, which I did all of the research on Anne first. So then I was kind of fangirling
Yeah.
that this one actually was in that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was a small Puritan world, evidently.
Yeah. I
Okay.
think there were 5 people living in
Yeah,
town.
yeah, pretty much. So remember when Anne had to go on that stupid church trial and she
Yeah.
was kicked out of the church? So
Yeah.
picture this. As she was exiting, like they're saying, get the fuck out. And then she starts leaving.
Yeah.
So I'm picturing her. She's walking down the aisle. Mary Dyer was there. Mm-hmm. She stood up. She walked to Anne. She took her hand and they walked out together.
Nice.
Sisters.
Yeah, I like it.
Isn't that great?
That's great.
Isn't that cool? Okay. Her husband, William Dyer, he got in trouble for being a part of this group.
Yeah.
He was disenfranchised completely and disarmed. They were afraid of uprisings, like riots. So all of these guys that are getting in trouble, they actually took away their guns. Yeah.
That's the irony.
Yeah. Eventually, they followed Anne and her husband to the Rhode Island area. They went that way too.
Yeah.
So here's the part that's really fucked. Again, Mary had a miscarriage. Again, trigger warning, content warning, miscarriage. And she miscarried a severely deformed child while living in Boston. But guess who her midwife was?
Was it Anne?
It was Anne.
So, question: you said they were pregnant at the same time. They both delivered like babies. Were they all fucking?
No, like they're adamant that they weren't, but what do I know?
But I mean, like, coincidental that they
It's
should
two
both have
different
deformed
things.
babies?
I think so, but it plays into the story.
It definitely does.
Yeah.
And it makes me suspicious of them even.
Yeah.
To where I'm like, that's a little
Right.
weird. But what they did to Mary is not.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
unconscionable.
Okay, so what they did do with the baby is they secretly buried it. They kept
Yeah.
it secret, and they buried it. And why? Well, why is because when that motherfucker Governor Winthrop
Yep.
eventually learned that there was a child, the ministers and the magistrates, they made it public. They
Yeah.
exhumed the child. They examined the infant. And here's a quote from someone who was involved. Okay? Mm-hmm. This is, yeah, if any of you have like trigger warning, content warning things about babies or fetuses, don't listen for a second, okay? So here's what he said. They went to the place of burial and commanded to dig it up to behold it. And they saw it, a most hideous creature, a woman, a fish, a bird, and a beast, all woven together. So obviously what they were doing was saying that this monstrous birth was clearly the result of Mary's monstrous religious
And they're describing
opinions.
they're describing it in a way that it's supposed to sound like a chimera
It gets worse.
or something.
Did you hear what Winthrop said? Governor Winthrop, he wrote in his journal about
I know
it.
this was clearly the result of her monstrous behavior, and that like God was punishing her for her sins or something.
He says of the child,
Yeah.
it was of ordinary bigness. Who does that sound like? It was hugely, bigly
This
nude.
Winthrop has some good words.
Yeah, he has the best words.
He does.
Motherfucker. It was of ordinary bigness. It had a face but no head, and the ears stood upon the shoulders and were like an ape's. It had no forehead, but over the eyes 4 horns, hard and sharp. 2 of them were above 1 inch long, the other 2 shorter. The eyes standing out, and the mouth also, the nose hooked upwards, all over the breast and back, full of sharp pricks and scales like a thorn back, which would have been like a skate or a ray, a manta ray.
Yeah.
The navel and all the belly, with the distinction of the sex, were where the back should be, and the back and hips before where the belly should have been. Behind, between the shoulders, it had 2 mouths, and in each of them a piece of red flesh sticking out. It had arms and legs as other children, but instead of toes, it had on each foot 3 claws, like a young fowl with sharp talons.
This sounds like it's like at least 95% bullshit.
It's like 98% bullshit. The child had anencephaly.
Anencephaly is
It had a partial or complete absence of a brain.
yeah. It doesn't have like a
And what Anne's
There's no
child had was
developed-
completely different.
no, it would be sunk in, right?
It was sunk in. That's
Yeah.
it. It
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
again, motherfuckers.
Yeah.
Okay. So Mary left Massachusetts about a decade later. She went to England at one point, and in England became a Quaker,
Yes.
which is kind of the worst thing she could do.
Yes, apparently. And like I have this idea of Quakers being like super chill dudes. 'Cause, like
Yes.
Franklin was a Quaker.
Right.
So I'm
Pacifist.
like, right? Quakers are cool. They like to just like sit around and not talk to each other. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So, apparently, most heinous
It's the
enemy of the
biggest
Puritan
heretic.
church. The biggest
Yeah.
heretic. They haven't met me, obviously. But yeah, the biggest heretic. Like, if you're a Quaker, like, you're
Yeah.
like buddies with Satan.
In Massachusetts, there were laws against being Quaker. Actual laws
Yeah.
on the book. You
like,
cannot
if you're
be
a
a
Quaker, you can't
Like,
be
seriously, my God's okay.
here.
My make-believe thing is okay. Your
Yeah.
make-believe thing is against the law.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And
So-
like, I mean, like, correct me if I'm wrong. Like, Quakerism is like pretty chill religion,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, I think so.
Like,
Nixon was a
I think of
Quaker.
it as like Buddhism, sort of, but like not the mean
You know, I would
kind.
have to look more into it, but
I'd
I
have
just
to-
remember, just like
If
you,
you're a
just kind
Quaker-
of being chill.
Yeah, if you're a
Right?
Quaker, like, I mean, my knowledge of
Kind of like
Quakerism
Amish
is like,
and cool and just stay to yourself. And what really is synonymous with Quaker to me is pacifist.
yeah. So if you're a
Yeah.
Quaker, let us know. Educate us. I'd love to know more
Oh,
about
absolutely.
it. Do you get to wear cool hats?
Yeah, I have a friend at work who's Quaker.
Do you?
Yeah.
So
She's back in
let's,
Philly.
Find out about
Yeah.
Quakers.
I would love to. That would be fun.
Go to one of those Quaker meetings.
Bring some oatmeal. Okay, when she returned to Boston, she was arrested, imprisoned, and banished. She told them to fuck off because she wasn't going anywhere. So they banished her again. She told them where they could stick that banishment too. They said, if you don't leave Boston and stay out, we're going to kill you. She told them, do what you got to do.
Yeah.
Deciding right then and there that she would die a martyr of the anti-Quaker laws and wanted them to be repealed. She defiantly...
She was the third of four.
Yeah. So she came back to Boston. She was sentenced to hang in 1659. She was on the gallows with the rope around her neck when a reprieve was announced. She told them they could shove that reprieve up their Puritan asses as well. She returned to Boston the following year. And this guy Endicott, who I think was the same guy who was there and wrote that about the long paragraph that I read about the baby with the horns and the beak.
Yeah.
And, okay, fuck him. That's Governor Winthrop. The other guy who said we took it out and it was a woman and a fish and a bear and a seagull. Yeah. That's this guy, Endicott.
Okay.
So she comes back into town. Endicott says, are you the same Mary Dyer that was here before? She says, I am the same Mary Dyer that was here at the last general court. Like, yeah, the one that you saw me, when I was in court, fucker.
Yeah.
And he says, you will own yourself a Quaker, will you not? She says, I own myself to be reproachably so called. And he said, sentence was passed upon you, the last general court, and now likewise, you must return to the prison, and there remain till tomorrow at 9 o'clock, and thence you will go to the gallows, and there be hanged till you are dead. And she says, this is no more than what thou saidst before. Literally, that's her quote. She's like, yeah, fucker, you said that before. And he said, but now it's to be executed. I just see him like pushing his little fists around.
Well, because he's like, I imagine that there is a degree of sensibility to some of these men. Maybe I assume too much about
I think you assume too much. See also modern president.
Yeah, but we can't. I mean, like, not all guys are him,
These
like,
guys
maybe
sound like they were.
But maybe the reason they're like, I'm gonna say it again, is like, hey, lady, this is your chance to not die. Like, they're like, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do.
He says, but now it is to be executed. Therefore, prepare yourself tomorrow at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
She says, I came in obedience to the will of God, the last general court, desiring you to repeal your unrighteous laws of banishment on pain of death. And that same is my work now, an earnest request, although I told you that if you refuse to repeal them, the Lord would send others of his servants to witness against them. And then she was hanged. Yeah, and you're right. She became the third of 4 Quaker martyrs. So there's a bronze statue of Dyer by Quaker sculptor Sylvia Shaw Judson. It stands outside of the Massachusetts State House in Boston, just like the Anne Hutchinson one. And it's also featured on the Boston Women's Heritage Trail. In Rhode Island, Mary Dyer and her friend Anne Hutchinson have been remembered at Founders Brook Park with the Anne Hutchinson / Mary Dyer Memorial Herb Garden. They have a herb garden. A medicinal botanical garden set by a scenic waterfall with a historical marker for the early settlement of Portsmouth. And the garden was created by artist and herbalist Michael Stephen Ford, who is a descendant of both women.
That is awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Do you have anything to add, my friend?
No, I'm still like really hung up on this whole like why everybody was having fucked up babies thing.
Well, that's something that you then go to the Library of Congress and find out what people were having deformed babies who got to be used as scapegoats of, oh, see, devil.
Yeah.
That's what you got to look into.
It's interesting.
Now, if, could one guy, let's say it's Henry Vale.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. He was the governor and he was friends of both of them.
Yeah.
So if he fucked both of them, if he knocked both of them up.
Yeah.
And they both had disfigured babies preterm that had different, like completely different diseases / chromosomal fuckery going on. Can that happen? Okay,
Maybe
so I have a
because
friend
I know
who,
that you can have like
cerebral palsy.
Yeah.
Two
Well,
kids in the
cerebral
same
palsy.
family.
So that's interesting because cerebral palsy is generally caused by injury sustained.
No, I'm sorry. Hold on. Muscular dystrophy.
Okay, I was gonna say because
No,
CP is caused by
I
damage.
totally take it back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, MD.
MD. Yeah. But also there are like genetic diseases that can be like
Henry VIII.
yeah.
Right?
So it would react differently depending on the uterus. I don't know. It's really interesting.
Well, that might be your thing because you're totally into like midwifery. You're
Yeah.
totally into babies. You're totally into history. Tabitha, this might be your thing that you
like
go research.
gynecological history
Yes, of Puritan Boston.
of just like
So
that in
you
general.
just got to
though.
start small. Like
Yeah.
seriously, Boston in these 10 years.
Yeah.
What happened?
What was going on?
That's your thing, dude.
Yeah. Did someone do something to the water? Was the water already bad? I mean, we're talking about like the beginning of civilization in the area.
Yeah.
You know, so they don't have plumbing. That's
These
for
are
sure.
two women that knew each other.
They knew each other. They lived in the same area. They probably ate
They knew
same
the same
food.
Were they poisoned?
Maybe. Was there something like
You also have
literally
to
was
look
there
at what it
something in the
was.
water?
Yeah. Like if it's a chromosome
Yeah.
fuckery,
Yeah.
or is it a like even at the basis of like stem cell fuckery?
And after they dug up the fetus, was it preserved in any way? Like, is there any way to go re-examine
I guarantee you, it
this?
didn't look like what Northrop said or
Oh
Winthrop
no,
said.
the mermaid thing is a thing.
Yeah.
Like that is a potential deformity. It's it's like weirdly adorable and
Yeah.
horrifying at
Yeah,
the same time.
It's bad. Yeah.
Because like if this
They're
child
like
was
fused, right? At
Yeah.
the, like ankles and
it's not
all the way up.
Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
the way up usually to their
Yeah.
waist, which means
Yeah.
that they can't get rid of waste, which means they don't survive.
Yeah.
But if they could survive, then they would be a mermaid. So it's one of those things, I guess.
Right.
But yeah, that kind of stuff is fascinating to me. So you're also going to talk about Herodias,
Yeah,
right?
hers is really pretty short.
Hers is pretty short.
Yeah.
And again, we have somebody who pretty much everything we know about her is just court cases.
right.
There's not really a lot of like
because Herodias, and interestingly, she was named after the person in the Bible that got John the Baptist beheaded. Mm-hmm. Like someone thought it was a good idea to name her after that person.
King Herod.
Herodias.
No.
Evidently a
Herodias?
woman. Look, I don't know my Bible studies.
I
okay?
don't. It's been a long time.
Yeah. Herodias, Long, Hicks, Gardiner, Porter. Mm-hmm. And then she was also known as like Herod, Heroda. Yeah. Hieronystophilus, I guess. So she was the wife of
Everybody.
3 early settlers of the colony of Rhode Island and Providence Plantation. So basically, she was a modern woman. Mm-hmm. When you really get down to it, she more resembles us. Mm-hmm. Okay? In this way.
Yeah.
Okay? She lived with whom she wanted. She was married 3 times. One was more common law. Mm-hmm. That works into the story. She hated her first husband. She got married when she was 13. Fucking hated him. He beat her. All that stuff.
In court documents, she made a statement that the reason that she married him was because her father had died.
Right. Yeah.
And she did not want to come to the United States.
She didn't want to marry
Or
him.
the whatever it was
Yeah.
called back then.
Yeah, she did
the
not
colony.
want to, yeah, she did not want to. She didn't want to be with him.
Yeah. She was
It was
like
bad. And
yeah.
then he sounded like he was a complete douche.
Oh my god, can you imagine though, like Hannah as a wife that didn't want to come
No.
on a boat?
No. I don't even want to think about this. So she left Hicks, her first husband, and got with Gardiner. She was with him for about 20 years, and they had like 7 or 9 children, depending on what you're reading.
Yeah.
And it was during these years that she became a Quaker. Dun, dun, dun.
Heathen.
Yeah. In 1658, this is another thing that was really cool. She did like her own woman's march.
By
Did
herself?
you hear about this?
No.
Oh, this is great. She did a protest. She did a one-woman protest, protesting against how Quakers were treated so poorly with the laws and shit.
Nice.
Yeah, so this was 1658.
But they didn't kill her for it. So things were better in 1658.
She walked for 60 miles to protest the treatment of Quakers through the woods. She had a baby suckling a boob.
That's what I was going to say. And
another
wasn't she with her friend?
And a child and a friend. So when she finally got back, she received 10 lashes by order of Governor Endicott.
So when I was reading about that, perhaps you can tell us, the way that I read it, she went into town and was subsequently whipped. Was she still with the baby? Like, did they arrest her later, or was it like she was marching?
I didn't see a timeline. It was everything that I read.
Because it seemed like it was like she showed up back into town. They got arrested.
She did this. Yeah. Evidently, people knew why she was doing this. It wasn't just, she's taking a walk.
Yeah.
She's 60 miles away now. Or, was it out and back? Was it a curve? I don't know.
Was it 60 miles around all of Boston?
Every single one said woods, first of all, but that could be. I'm not saying she was, up in the mountains, but that she had she had a baby on her boob.
Yep.
And she had her other child with her. And maybe one or two other women. Yeah. But anyway, it was known that it was a protest, and it was known it was against how they treat the Quakers. And when she got back into town, she received 10 lashes from that same Governor Endicott.
Yeah.
This is the same fucker who...
Endicott.
Right? And then she was in prison for 14 days for supporting the Quaker faith.
I'm imagining that, if they go by biblical law, they probably, she keeps a baby.
Yeah. Right? It never said.
Well, if you're in Afghanistan and you have a baby and you, kill your rapist husband, the baby goes to jail with you.
Oh, lovely.
So, great documentary on that, by the way. You should check it out.
I don't know if I can right now.
You can. It's okay. It'll be okay. It's not bad. It's uplifting.
Hold me.
No, it's okay. It's uplifting.
By 1664, Herodias petitioned for separation from Gardiner, saying that they'd never been married according to the law in the first place.
Yeah.
So they should be able to get a divorce.
Which is funny because earlier, in order to get land transferred, she goes before the court and is like, I act like I'm married to him, and I deserve exactly right. The legal protection of that.
Yeah, she has.
But she never actually marries him.
She never did, and then she asked for some money so that she could stay in her own house on her land.
Yeah,
which is
take care of her kids
for this time.
Yeah, and take care of her kids. She's like, and you have to pay me money, like child support.
Right. Yeah. And she wanted the authorities to actually give him a restraining order.
Keep him away.
To keep him from
What
fucking
did she say?
with her.
What did you... Do you have the quote?
I don't have the quote.
She commands to them for the... she requests for the government to see that he troubles her no more. Or something like that is how it was phrased. Yeah.
The authorities, though, I do have a quote from them. They judged that both of them had been living in horrible sin of uncleanliness, which was a reproach and scandal. So they were both fined and told not to lead such scandalous lives.
Yeah.
Just don't do that.
Then she moved. Oh, you want to tell the next one?
Yeah, so then she went and lived with a guy named John Porter as his housekeeper.
Yeah, who was still kind of married.
Kind of
married. Mostly married.
He had left his wife
and
was shacking up with her. And then the wife was like, he's fucking her. And they're you can't do that.
They're like, eh.
Yeah.
And then didn't they also have to pay fines? And then they were married anyway.
There was a trial.
Yeah.
And this time they were both there was 2 trials.
Yeah.
And they were both acquitted. And then she lived a happy life after that and died between 1674 and 1705. Because once again, she didn't do anything else. So there was nothing that was saying.
Records.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also interesting.
There were some deeds and stuff that she had signed. And so that's why they know between here and here.
Yeah. And so interesting about the last guy that she married.
Yeah, Porter.
Porter. He was the 3rd largest landholder in the area at the time. So she married her way up to the 1%.
Yeah.
So she spent those last years of her life set up.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's interesting because we know about her just because she was divorced.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and she just says, I don't want to be with him. I don't want to be with him anymore. Now I want to be with this guy.
Yeah.
And it's not heard of.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how divorce works in the Quaker Society.
That is an interesting question because the Puritans actually seemed pretty chill considering like we do have this idea of funeral pyres and whatever, or burning witches at the stake and whatnot, which really wasn't like I think they mostly hung people. Considering that we think of them as burning witches at the stake and whatnot, the fact that they're so blasé about them living together in sin for 30 years, they're like, "Ugh, don't be sluts next time." Like
Yeah.
they didn't get excommunicated. They didn't get, you know what I'm saying? Like it's kind of interesting that
When I first read it, I wanted to look at the timeline and saying, are they just kind of getting more lax in the rules?
Yeah.
Like Hutchinson, it's like, fuck you, you're banished, go get killed by Indians. And then Mary Dyer's like, yeah, we're fucking killing you. And
Yeah.
then time passes and it's later in the 17th century and they're like,
yeah, because we're talking
stop
about
sinning.
when we talking about Mary Dyer and Anne Hutchinson, we're talking about 1632 to 1638, 39. Really,
yeah, Hutchinson
right?
died in 43.
Yeah. So then we're talking 20 years later for Herod over there.
Yeah.
And so,
1660 for Dyer.
So do we see?
There's like 20 years. Well, Oh, yeah, 1664. So 4 years after Mary died is when she petitioned for the separation from Gardiner.
So
There
not
was a
too
trial,
much.
but they weren't killed. So that's progress, not perfection.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Why
Yeah.
weren't they killed? When we have other people who are guilty of? I mean, she's a Quaker and she's shacking up with this guy, and we don't know if he's a
Right.
Quaker or not.
No, I didn't
What if
say.
he's a Puritan? There's probably something against Puritans shacking up with Quakers,
Well, it's against a lot of B1, so
right?
yeah.
So then, like, that's kind of
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Well, like you said, that we're talking about an actual very small time frame
Yeah.
in history.
Yeah, because like I said, when we talk about the holiday of Thanksgiving, that peaceful period between the founding of Plymouth Plantation and what became the truth of American history, which is just people stealing land from other people.
Yeah, manifest destiny.
And a lot of it was the fact that the people who were here already realized that they had a commodity, but the settlers weren't willing to pay
No.
for that. And instead
But also,
just
if
killed
you
them.
don't have the concept of I own this land, it's
Yeah.
like, no, this
Well, that's
is...
why. So when Massasoit's son was raised in this peaceful period, so we have 50 years of peace between the natives and what we know as the Puritans. But if you've done any research, you know that there were actually very few Puritans and that there were a lot of free men, and then men that were like
lot of, like,
ex-criminals.
prisoners, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was
Prisoner
probably
meaning
yeah.
jailed. Yeah.
So a lot of those settlers and that may be why they were so hardcore about the religious aspect of the law, because maybe they thought they're dealing with all of these men who have been to prison.
I would
and
agree with you
maybe-
more if this wasn't exactly how it was being run from what I read in England.
Yeah.
Like they came here. They
Yeah.
came here because like Cotton was like, can't we all just get along?
No, and then yeah, exactly. Well, then I'm talking just like in general, like
Yeah.
like there was a 50-year period of just like trying to survive and set up the colony.
Sure. Sure.
And so during that period, you're seeing all this kind of like, do we kill people for being Quakers? Maybe we shouldn't kill people for being Quakers. How about this?
'cause
How about we
people
just
are
like
dying of other stuff.
yeah, like
Yeah.
we don't
We
have
won't
enough
have a
people to
population.
really do this. Yeah.
Right.
So you see them kind of relaxing, and then they have to deal with, after everything goes down with Prince Philip, they basically start a war,
Yeah.
and then they have to deal with trying to survive that.
Yes.
Instead of trying to make friends and like
That's why you have to look at every historical thing in context
Yeah.
of its own time. Mm-hmm. Because, yeah, there was a lot going on. It's not a single issue
yeah.
society.
And even understanding that female experience for the puritanical woman, many women were totally comfortable with their position. But I think that that's true in any period of history.
Sure.
You know, and especially in the puritanical faith where you're being told that if you're unhappy or like sore from working too hard or whatever, then like you're supposed to be. You're supposed to work hard and hurt and whatever to
You're earning your way to heaven.
Yeah, and the fact that it was part of the puritanical society to treat marriage as something that should be about like not just love, also something deeper and like your covenant with God or whatever, but the fact that also they allowed for the love, I think kind of speaks to the female experience that like there were midwives around. They weren't treated like witches, which means that women probably had a better chance surviving childbirth, and you know what I mean. So it's like all of these other aspects of what it meant to be a Puritan woman.
I think you need to look into that. I think
really
you would have a
interesting.
lot of fun.
Yeah,
If you could get
Go.
some,
I wanna
some
go.
source material.
Yeah, I want to go.
Yeah.
And like,
I
don't
wish
know.
I had something that was like really juicy that I could have looked for when I was there.
Yeah. Did you ever watch Plymouth Plantation? That was one of those PBS shows where they like.
Did you see the episode with Oprah?
No.
Yeah, she went to it. She was on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh no, I don't
Yeah.
know that. Oh yeah.
I loved that show. That's one of the first things you and I bonded over, actually.
Plymouth Plantation.
No, watching that show.
Oh.
We talked like no one else that we know has ever watched that show, and you and I watched
Yeah.
that show.
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, because
I
they
used to
took
make my
people
kids
from
watch
modern
it.
society and made them
Yeah.
live
In
there.
like
yeah,
yeah.
It was on PBS. I don't remember the name of it right now.
It was it was awesome.
Yeah.
And
I've been to Plymouth Plantation too,
yeah.
because they do it like cosplay.
Yeah.
They all cosplay Puritans.
Yeah,
It
I don't
was really
know
cool.
that
I got called a doxy when I was there.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
He's a really cute guy, a metal worker.
Oh.
He's like, you two, you doxies? I'm like, maybe.
You're like, is that
Maybe.
will you take your shirt off if I say yes or
Yeah,
no?
Right.
Or which answer is going to lead to that? That was one of my so as I read this when I read this blog and I looked into this woman and kind of like, got into this whole like rabbit hole of feminism.
Yeah.
On her bio, one of the things is that her favorite movies are any movies with cute guys on horses, and I was like, yep, I feel that.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Like that guy when we saw the Shakespeare
Oh
thing.
my God. In my head, he will always be the Duke.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell the story?
No, you go ahead.
Okay. So if you live in LA, you may or may not have been to Griffith Park. Do we have time for this?
No, but go ahead.
Okay. So in Griffith Park, they have Shakespeare in the Park, and you lay on this grass hill, and it's quite lovely, and you watch Shakespeare. So we are set up with our chairs and whatever. No, I think we were sitting on the ground.
We were sitting on blankets.
Yeah, and this dashing man rides up because you could ride. There's a equestrian center like right nearby, and like so people ride
you
horses
can ride
in
horses
here all
through
the time. Yeah.
Griffith Park.
So he rides up and, it looks like he's just kind of on his ride and this is part of his trail.
On his steed.
Yeah, on his steed. Like legit gorgeous horse. Like not a Frisian, but like a big one. And because he was not a small man either. This is why he's the Duke in my head.
I know. And he also had, if you can picture, so he's sitting on a horse and then he made his hand into a fist and put it on his
Oh my God.
hip. And he was just kind of like one hand, not both of them because that'd look weird.
Yeah.
But one hand on his hip
And
the other
one
one
hand
just like
on his
pummel.
leg. Wasn't it? Was it on the pummel
Yeah,
or was
like,
that?
yeah, like in
Yeah.
that area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Wish I had my hand on his pummel.
right? So we're looking at this guy. Who is this guy? And he's like on the top, like the crest of the freaking hill. Like it's
Yeah.
it's so the
Like
sun
50
is
feet away.
setting. We're on blankets. It's like a starry night. It's the guy on the horse, and legit at least 6 women. What kind of horse is that? Do you ride here often? Oh man, that guy was getting it thrown at his face all over. The Duke.
Oh, the Duke.
And then he sat there on his horse with his hand on his hip as though he were watching over his kingdom.
That's right.
And he watched the whole show.
Yeah.
It was so crazy.
Yeah.
It's like this fucking guy. He killed it that night.
It was great.
You did it, Duke.
Good times.
The Duke.
Duke. All right. This one was weird.
It was weird. We just kind of like talked about something, but it was interesting.
Yeah. It felt more like I don't know, a documentary or something. I hope it was still funny.
I hope it was funny.
Yeah, I hope I hope you were all still. Do we not entertain you? Are you not entertained?
If it was not funny, let us know, and we'll be 10 times funnier tomorrow.
We won't do that experiment. But like, this is a time that we could talk about what's going on in society. And it really matters, like society as a character in this.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's, because I feel the way that I do about Thanksgiving. So hashtag, I am not into Thanksgiving. I don't really like that we celebrate it. I think that we should have changed like why we celebrated a long time ago, and it should have turned into something else. And I'm just not like super.
Can I tell you a
into
funny
it.
story about Thanksgiving?
That you love Thanksgiving. Stacie likes
no.
Thanksgiving.
We go to Mark and Debbie's every year. That's what I like. I like that it's a day set aside that no matter what, I get to go see these relatives.
Yeah.
I like that. And I like some of the food. And I like having a day off.
Yeah.
Okay. No, so I went to England over Thanksgiving in '99.
Yeah.
And we were on this big tour bus with a bunch of other fucking stupid Americans.
My favorite.
Who were pissed that where we were stopping was not celebrating Thanksgiving. How dare they? They were pissed.
That.
And I'm like, why would they? Because it's Thanksgiving. Why would they?
Yeah.
Because it's look in my eyes. Tell me, why would they celebrate Thanksgiving?
What are they celebrating? Oh, I know.
Thursday. They were celebrating Thursday.
I bet you those celebrated now, though, because they don't have these colonies. They're like, yay!
They have their own guy.
Oh, no, I know.
Johnson.
He's, like, kind of scary.
Both of them. They're bookends.
Yeah. What was I going to say about Puritans? Yeah, so, like, I'm not super into Puritans. That's why it was kind of difficult for me to get behind one of these women as a hero, because to me, they're just, like, it's very much like the whole Guy Fawkes situation, where I'm just like,
but here's why I can. Anne Hutchinson was coming in and saying, let's talk about this.
Yeah.
And let me empower you. You don't need these fuckers.
Yeah.
I can
see, and I appreciate
be
that.
Empowered.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So that's what I can get behind.
Yeah. More so than like, come be a Quaker. Like this other religion is better. I like the idea that's like, you can be faithful and have a relationship with like the universe that's deeper by yourself and interpret it how you feel, because that's basically
do
like,
your thing. Don't make me do your thing.
Yeah.
I feel that way now. Do your thing.
Yeah.
If you are all about religion and doing your thing, I guess I got to say I celebrate that because you do you. Just don't make me do you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it was weird because it was like two religions fighting over their magical unicorn.
Yeah.
But the Quakers are actually kind of cool, so I could kind of get behind that.
See, and I'd like to know more about the Quakers.
Stop being Puritan. Come over here.
No, it's just like, let's all
stick pins in our eyes.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's just let us interpret it how we want to interpret it.
Yeah. And be educated. I mean, this is like this, and if you think about it, we're only talking like 200 years after like the Dark Ages, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, in 200 years, we went from like most people aren't allowed to read to, any schmo who could read the Bible can become a preacher. So I feel like that was some progress.
All of this is progress.
And then Anne Hutchinson's like, well, guess what? Anyone who can read the Bible and make their own interpretations. And I think this is where it like becomes difficult for me to discuss this subject, because it's like, so you can't discuss it without discussing religion. You know what I mean? Like discussing puritanical history, like talking about the fact that the religion was dictating the laws. That's so like upsetting to me to celebrate that. Like,
well, no one's asking you to celebrate.
No, I know.
We're just deciphering it.
Yeah.
And
no, but I'm saying like
the
because we're talking about this because of the season that it is. You know what I mean?
Of course.
It's like November, and so we're shining a light on this.
Correct. And yes, and
yeah.
You, like I said before, you have to look at it in the context of the time, which was religious. It's like, what if later on eons from now, there are no fish in the water. Okay, sad, but there's no
Yeah.
fish, so you just never knew the fish.
Yeah.
And then you look back on it and go, God, they were so stupid. Those fish were actually in water. Can you believe that, like, back then, fish were actually in water?
Yeah.
But you can look at them and say, well, back in the day, that's how the fish lived.
Yeah.
It was nothing wrong with it. There can be no judgments. That's just historically the way it was.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. So I'm not celebrating it, but I'm dissecting it.
Yeah.
And
I like that. And I
yeah.
like that. Yeah. Because even when you talk about ultimately, like, why I really don't like Thanksgiving, which is what the settlers ultimately did to the native people.
Sure.
When you talk about, like, the core story, that's why, like, the story of Massasoit and Prince Philip is so important. Because it's
Absolutely.
understanding, like, the finite details. It wasn't
It's still
just
going on.
Yeah.
Bullshit is still
And
happening.
it wasn't just like all of a sudden the Puritans woke up and killed everybody, or all of a sudden this was we're talking now business. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of course there was racism, and it was definitely used as propaganda to fuel that, because different is easy to hate,
Yeah,
but
the other.
that
Yeah.
we're also talking about money and politics, and this is why the prequels happened.
Yeah.
Because, like, when you talk about war, you have to talk about all this other boring bullshit that's behind war.
Sure.
But
But that's why this episode was never going to be,
no.
let's talk about Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, what's thematic for right now?
Yeah.
That would be on the minds.
Well, this was interesting for me to dig a little bit
This
deeper.
was huge.
Because, I mean, discovering that there was so little to find is a discovery. You know what I mean? Because it's like, when you were like, Anne Hutchinson, you're like, I found a bunch of them. And I'm like a bunch, like a literal bunch, like just like a handful.
A handful,
of them,
yeah.
You know?
A handful in a week while I'm working
Yeah.
and going to school.
Yeah.
I mean, if we really did a deep dive, I mean,
Oh,
maybe we
no.
can challenge
Each one of these
ourselves to
could do-
say,
yeah.
how many can we really
And
find?
how much other information can we find if we look for different sources,
Yeah.
That's kind of,
And then cover in a podcast that doesn't last 3 hours.
yeah. Are we at 3 hours?
No.
We're close, though.
We're at 1 hour and 24.
Ah, that's fine.
It's much longer than we typically like to be. We like to keep it around an hour.
Yeah. I was like, I could do 30 minutes on this, or 400. Mm-hmm. I could just, I mean,
You know what's so funny? is I
also
was
change the
telling-
subject 6 times.
I was
too.
talking about this with my work teammate Dyer this afternoon, and she was asking about how long the podcast is, and I said we like to keep it like between 58 minutes and 1 hour 7. But if you go over 1 hour 20, it just doesn't feel good. Now we're at 1 hour 25 and a half.
Uh-oh. All right.
Editing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was that good?
Yeah.
Did you feel good? I felt like it was interesting.
I feel oddly energized.
Yeah.
It wasn't like one of the fun ones.
No.
Like
But-
I got really upset researching.
Yeah.
It's like pissed off for these women on behalf of these women and their children and families. Mm-hmm. But I was oddly energized by what I was learning, and then talking to you about it again, I feel like we accomplished something.
I think so too. And,
I don't
and it's
know.
like, because when, like, I know who John Winthrop is.
Yeah,
I've heard of him,
and John Cotton.
and I probably did hear Anne's name maybe once.
Right, but I didn't know what she did.
I didn't know what she
Like
did.
I was like, oh yeah, we can talk about Anne Hutchinson and whatever she did.
Yeah.
I thought
Probably
actually
a witch.
I thought she was a witch.
Yeah. That's like, that would have been my
Yeah.
assumption. And because that's how little we think of women in that time period, is like, if we know about them, they were witches.
Right. Right.
And instead, it's, if we know about them, they were philanderers. Is a woman who marries many men a philanderer?
They didn't use that word.
What would you call it? A slut?
Quaker.
Quaker? That's gonna be my new
don't
insult.
know.
Oh, you're such a Quaker, Stacey.
Fucking Quaker.
Fucking Quakers.
Fucking pacifist.
Fucking
Cool
with
person.
their peaceful meetings of deep thought. Ridiculous.
What are you, a Rhode Islander?
I drove through Rhode Island once. Actually,
I
no, I
haven't.
stayed in Rhode Island. I slept in Rhode Island. And I imagined that I could see the whole state from where I was. Like, I don't know if that was accurate, but it felt that small. Like, I
Yeah.
felt like I could see the end of it.
I was told you can fit 13 Rhode Islands in the county I was raised in.
Wow.
All right, we should wrap this up.
Okay.
Yeah. So we hope you enjoyed this. This is kind of weird. Let us know if you didn't. Let us know if you did.
Yeah, let us
Because
know.
we'll do more of this kind of thing where we just do a deep dive into the entire picture of it.
Yeah.
How I described it to Tabitha was like she's kind of setting the stage and I'm adding the characters
Yeah.
and putting on a play. So let us know if that worked for you. You know, was it good for you too? We hope you have a great week. Happy Thanksgiving.
Huh? Yeah.
We're thankful for you. I'm thankful for so much in my life. There's a lot that's going so great, and I hope that's the same for you guys. Drop us a line, write a review. We'd be thankful for a review or
Yes.
two or 500. Kakistan, we love you, and
Yeah.
have a happy Thanksgiving wherever you are. If you're American, but I don't think you are.
Do they have
don't know.
in a Thanksgiving equivalent? Canada has a
Yes.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, in October.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They already thanked us.
yeah, they already did their thing.
themselves.
Thank God we're not American. All right, everyone. Have a wonderful week, month, whatever. We will see you soon. Everyone stay slutty.
Burner. Burner.